the first indicator, and let me tell you, this is the only one which is going to take time. Because if you understood this first indicator to measure the national income, which is the commonly used or widely used indicator among the economies in the world, this can easily help you in understanding the other indicators also. Clear? So that's why I devote a long amount of time, good amount of time in making you understand about the concept of GDP. Clear? So try to understand the definition of GDP. Gross domestic product. GDP is the gross. GDP is the gross value of all final marketable goods and services produced within the domestic territory in a specified period. Produced within the domestic territory in a specified period. Clear? अब ये तो एक definition है, which you guys can also must be reading it. That GDP is the gross, or you can say the total value of goods and services produced within an economy, produced within the domestic territory in a specified year. Now let me elaborate the meaning of each term. The first term itself, gross. GDP is the gross. You can see the word gross. Gross means the total value added in an economy. Like, given you an example, like suppose in the last financial year, that is, or I would say the current financial year, this board has been bought up. This board has been bought. Clear? So that means it's a new value that is being added in an economy. Clear? That goes, the value is suppose 100 rupees that is added. Now let us come to the next year. Now next year, no, this board has been bought. This one board was enough. Now what happened? Don't you think this is a capital good? And I have told you that the capital good depreciate over time. Depreciate means it loses its value. Now the next year, don't you think this value will decline by 10%, 15%, whatever its depreciation value, it is going to decline. Yes or no? If you remember, we have discussed this concept, capital goods. The capital goods decline, depreciate. Or if you remember one more concept we have discussed, fixed versus working capital in lecture 1. Fixed capital is what? Fixed capital is long-term, yes or no, long-term capital assets. Fixed capital also depreciate. This is nothing but, I have given you an example, this is nothing but an example of fixed capital. Clear? Now what has happened is, are we deducting that depreciation? Gross GDP says, this GDP says, no. I am not deducting that. I am simply calculating how much value is added. But every year the capital good is losing its value. So don't you think that should be deducted? GDP says, I don't deduct that. GDP takes into consideration the total value. That means it does not take into account the depreciation of capital good. I'll elaborate this word depreciation later, don't worry, but it does not take into account the depreciation of a capital good, because capital good depreciate over time. Clear? So GDP is the gross. That means simply it calculates, okay, it simply sums up, I would say, sums up the value of goods and services being produced in an economy, added like that. Then it is the value. It is the value. Now, when I say value, what I mean with this value? How this value will be reflected? How this value can be calculated? To know the value, what you require the prices. require the prices of goods and services. To know the value, like suppose suppose I said that, okay, one economy course, one Pulse economy course has been like developed. It's not about one Pulse economy course has been developed. What is the value of that goods and service that has been created? For that, some price tag must be given. So if I tell you, like suppose, okay, 731 students multiplied by 500. So that is the value being generated. That is the value being generated. Are you getting my point? From this particular course. So try to understand for value what is required, the prices. But then the next question comes, so prices of which year? So prices of current year, that is the running year, or sir prices of some base year. If you take the prices of, these prices can be of 2 years, the prices of current year, yes or no, or the prices of constant year. Now if you take the prices of current year, that will be known as nominal GDP. And if you take into consideration the prices of some constant year, which is also known as base year, that will be known as real GDP. We'll be elaborating, don't worry, we'll be elaborating all of these terms. So what you understood as of now, GDP is the gross value. Value means the price of goods. How much is the value of those goods and services are being generated. And to know the value of goods and services, what you need? The prices. The question comes, the prices of which year? Some current year or the prices of some base year. Now why is it so? The prices of some constant or base. See, if I talk about the prices of current year, suppose this course price of the current year is 500. Now, some base year, if I talk about, this price have been, the price of this have been higher due to the inflation that has happened over the years. Yes or no? That is why the price of any good or service increases. That is because of inflation. Just like you guys can see, 8th pay commission. Why it has increased your salaries? Why? Because even the government know that, okay, there is an inflation and that is why your salary need to increase. Are you getting my point? So in the same way, there must be some base year. Let us suppose 2011-12. And then there is a current year, 2025-26. So what is that? During these 13-14 years, don't you think so the prices have increased? While the output might be the same, but the prices have increased. And because of that, the prices of current year and the prices of constant year will be different. What is the difference between these two? The prices of current year and the prices of constant year will be different. And this difference is due to the inflation. This difference between these two is the inflation. Are you getting my point? We'll elaborate more about that later. So GDP is the gross value of final. GDP is the gross value of final goods. And we have understood the definition of final goods already. What do you mean by final goods? Final goods are those goods which cannot or does not undergo transformation by the actions of producer. Are you getting my point? Final goods are the goods which does not undergo transformation by the actions of producer. Remember that example of baker. Yes or no? The eggs for us as an household level is a final good, but the egg for the baker is an intermediate good. So GDP, sir, you are saying it does not capture intermediate goods. Yes or no? Obviously, because if you capture the intermediate goods, just try to understand. If you capture the intermediate goods, what will happen? If you capture the intermediate goods, what will happen? The reason is that will be double counted. If you include the egg, like egg bought by the baker, you are including it in the GDP. Let us suppose you are including that intermediate good in the GDP. Now you are going to include the cake also. So don't you think the value of egg will be calculated twice? And that will lead to double counting of GDP or overestimation of GDP. So that is the reason this intermediate goods are not included. It only captures the final goods. The reason here I am writing it to avoid double counting. To avoid double counting in the GDP. To avoid double counting in the GDP. So GDP is the gross value of final marketable. Now what I mean with the marketable? Marketable means, in short, we have again covered this. In short, it is referring here economic activities. Marketable means, in short, it is referring here economic activities. And what we have understood from the economic activities, those activities which have been undertaken for in the consideration of a financial gain. So marketable means for which there has been a remuneration attached. There has been the financial transfer is included in exchange of this activity. Exchange of this activity. So like, let me give you an example. So that means if I talk about the marketable, so you are saying, sir, barter system is not included. Yes, it does not include the barter system. Why? Does the barter system includes any remuneration? No. Or the household activities done by us? It does not include the household activities. Yes or no? Like, let me give you an example. Like suppose we cook, me and my wife, we both cook, and sometimes, not just sometimes, I would say, suppose we are cooking, and are we paying it, whether that activity will be counted in the GDP? No. My wife generally take care of, along with the director of this company, my wife also take care of the daughter also. Whatever I say that, okay, how much I am cooperating with her, how much I am helping her, I can tell you for sure that 70%, more than 70% of that caring for the daughter or the baby, any baby, is done by the mother itself. Now, see, this caring of raising of the child, now you see this activity when it is done by us, is it included in the GDP? No, because there is no remuneration involved. But when you hire, now you try to understand, when you hire a cook, you are paying them. You are paying them. So he is cooking or he or she is cooking in exchange of that financial gain. So at that point of time, it will be included in the calculation of GDP. Getting my point? Next, suppose we might not be able to devote that much time to raise our children. So what happens? We might send our children to the daycare. When you are sending to the daycare, you are paying for that in exchange of the service which you are getting, that is raising of your child. So that payment, that remuneration which you are giving them, that is included. But when it is done by us, it is not included. Now you imagine, guys, this under-reporting of this household activity actually has been a concern area. The simple reason is because the women work is not accounted for. आपने बहुत ज़्यादा देखा होगा, even in the movies and everywhere, somewhere in the neighbor also. Many times out of the anger, you can say, the husband might have said to their wife कि तुम करते ही क्या हो फैमिली के लिए, तुम करती ही क्या, बैठी तो हूं. Anytime if this someone just says to you, I'm just saying to all the females out there, that anytime if someone says to you, simply just tell him that, okay, you do this work, I'll earn for this family. The reason is what is happening, because that household activity is not counted. And let me tell you, when this role gets reversed, even husband is taking care of the home and the wife is earning for the family, the wife will also be saying out of anger to the husband कि तुम घर पे ही तो बैठे हो, क्या कर रहे हो? The reason is not about male or female. The reason is economic, because that work is not counted in the GDP. And when that work is not counted in the GDP, और हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं कि भैया आप लोग कमा क्या रहे हो, और पूरी सक्सेस एक आदमी की सिर्फ उसकी कमाई से देखी जाती है, चाहे वो उसका एक आदमी हो, चाहे वो एक बेसिकली वर्किंग पर्सन, सिर्फ कितना कमा रहे हो। आज आप लोग भी इन्फ्लुएंस होते होगे इस इंस्टाग्राम एंड ऑल से, but you guys are just seeing the world which they are trying to show to you. What is going in their life inside, nobody knows. They would be the only ones. But try to understand, this problem is a very bigger problem, because we don't even realize that when this household activity is not like counted in the GDP, this leads to a problem of thinking in the family that other person is not doing anything. This is what. Now, whether it be female or the male, just look at, I remember that movie, Key and Ka. Key and Ka movie. I like that I like that movie a lot. I've watched with my wife that movie, I would say, number of times. Because that simple idea it has demonstrated, it is not about male or female, it is about who is earning for the family generally thinks that the other person who is taking care of the family generally thinks that the other person who is taking care of the family is not doing anything. Not doing anything, or he's subordinate to that person. Because of that, what happens when that thinking goes into the mind, somehow the earning one puts himself a little bit at a higher pedestal above than the other partner. And because of that, somehow he gets the thinking that he somehow believes that I have a right to disrespect the other partner, which is wrong. If he tries to analyze and put it in another way, he might be understanding that stuff. I know it because I know that problem lies in the economic. It's not about that, okay, male and female and like that. It's more about the economic, that this activity is not counted in the GDP. Clear? Continuing. So I am saying that in this marketable, only economic activities are included in the GDP. Then GDP is the gross value of final marketable goods and services. It captures both goods and services which is produced within economy. Now I am saying number of times, sir, produced within an economy. What I mean is produced within the domestic territory. Produced within the domestic territory. Now, what I mean with the domestic territory? Sir, domestic territory, does it mean only the political frontiers? No. Domestic territory is more than that. What all come under the domestic territory is domestic territory. One, definitely, yes, political frontiers. Political frontiers of a country. Definitely. One aspect, that political frontiers. Second, see, you might have come across this term known as UNCLOS. You might have come across UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. Clear? It has created certain zoning of the international waters. Am I going to discuss here? No. Akhilesh sir has nicely discussed in his geography classes about the UNCLOS. If you guys do not know as of now about UNCLOS, you can even Google it, but I'm not going to cover it. So what I'm trying to tell you, that domestic territory, one is political frontiers. Second, then there is a bit till the 12 nautical miles, up to 12 nautical miles from the border till the waters, from the political frontiers. This is political border. From here, 12 nautical miles, even this is considered the sovereign territory of the state. So 12 nautical miles. 12 nautical miles from the land borders. Even this is considered a domestic territory. Third, now up to 200 nautical miles from the border. up to 200 nautical miles from the border, there is a zone known as exclusive economic zone. Exclusive economic zone. And under this exclusive economic zone, it says that this nation state has the exclusive rights for the exploration and production of the minerals underneath this water. So thereby, whatever minerals you are able to come out, whatever minerals you are able to take out from this exclusive economic zone, that belongs to whom? The nation state. So that means even the economic part, even the production within up to the exclusive economic zone falls under the India's GDP. Clear? So then third is economic rights. Economic rights in the exclusive economic zone, that is up to 200 nautical miles. Clear? Fourth. Now you might have seen various ships and aircrafts operated by the Indian residents between two countries. Like see Air India. So suppose I was going to the Mauritius some years, there was a story of certain years back. So I went to Mauritius and even to Dubai. So you see, once I went by Air India. Now when I went by an Air India, so what has happened? When I went by Air India, the ticket I purchased, that will go to whom? That will go to India's GDP. But when I was returning back, I booked an Emirates. Emirates is not operated by an Indian resident. That is operated by the UAE resident. Clear? So the ticket which I bought it for the Emirates, that will not come under the India's GDP. Are you understanding? The ships and aircrafts which are operated between two countries, two or more countries, we will be putting the economic activities of those ships and aircrafts operated between two countries under the GDP when it is operated by the residents of our country. So here I am writing ships and aircrafts operated by the residents between two or more countries. So this is very important thing, that okay, this ship and aircraft which is operated. Clear? Remember this example. Like suppose the ticket which I booked it in Emirates, that will not go for the India's GDP calculation. Clear? Then fifth, one more thing. You must have seen the Indian embassies in US, Indian embassies and consulates in US, UK, various other countries. Yes or no? Now those embassies or consulates, they provide the services, visa services to the foreign people. So no, they provide various type of services. And in exchange of that, they get an income. The income earned by those embassies people, which is in India only. What about that, sir? Will that come under India's domestic territory? Yes. This embassies or consulates established in the other countries forms part of the India's domestic territory. Forms part of the India's domestic territory. Embassies or consulates established in other countries. So are you getting this point? Now in the same way, sir, if you talk about the UK embassy in Delhi, US embassy in Delhi, like this, the other countries' embassy, sir, will that be considered under India's domestic territory? No. Why will they come under India's domestic territory? No. Clear? That will be considered their domestic territory. So the income which is earned by the embassies, the other foreign country embassies in our country, will go to their country's GDP, not our country's GDP. I hope you are getting this. Apart from that, there are various offices, international offices in our country. Whether you talk about International Solar Alliance, or then there are other countries' offices, other international organization offices. Now, those international offices, will they form part of the domestic territory? No. The offices of international organization, they form part of the international territory. They do not form part of the domestic territory. So that is excluded. Clear? So I hope you have understood the meaning of domestic territory. So the economic activity which is produced within this domestic territory will be included in the calculation of GDP. Clear? Lastly, GDP is calculated for a specific period. And if I mention here, this specific period in our country, GDP data is released on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis. It is released on a quarterly basis or on an annual basis. If I talk about quarterly basis, there are 4 quarters. I'm not just writing it here. 4 quarters. Quarter 1, 1st April to 30th June. Second quarter, quarter 2, 1st July to 30th September. Then the next quarter, third, 1st October to 31st December. And the fourth quarter, you will see the 1st January till 31st March. So data is released on a quarterly basis and then on an annually basis. Who releases this data? This data is released by the National Statistical Office. This data is released, the GDP data is released by the National Statistical Office, which is under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, commonly known as MOSPI. MOSPI. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, commonly known as MOSPI. Clear? Any doubt? This is about the GDP which I wanted to give you an idea. But have we gone into detail about certain things? There is certain things still left. Now, when we discussed that sir, GDP is the value, one idea we discussed is the gross. Clear? Then second thing we discussed is sir, GDP is the value. And when I talk about the value, guys, to know the value of goods and services, what is required? You require the prices. To know about the value of goods and services, you require the prices. And this prices, guys, you can take it for a current year. This prices could be taken for a current year, or this prices can be taken as a constant year, which is nothing but some base year. Okay? If you calculate the GDP based on the prices of current year, it will be called as nominal GDP. So in a very, very layman based, I'm writing it, nominal GDP can be written as quantity produced in the current year multiplied by prices of current year. This is how you calculate GDP. Because how will you find out the value? To find out the value is how much quantity of, suppose this pen, how much quantity of this pen is produced? 10. And whatever the price of one pen, suppose 10. So 100. On the other hand, when you calculate the GDP based on the prices of some constant year, it is known as real GDP. And real GDP will be again quantity of current year multiplied by prices of base year, some constant year. And the difference between these two is nothing but simply inflation. The prices of current year is likely to be higher, likely. Okay, while I'm telling you likely, I'll talk about that. Likely to be higher as compared to the prices of base year. This is known as nominal and real GDP. But let me go a little bit into more understanding, more depth about the relationship between nominal and real GDP. And for that, I always tell in my class, let us take an hypothetical scenario. Clear? Let us try some hypothetical scenario. Let us see, this is some base year. So base year we have taken it, suppose 2011-12. Then we have taken it 2017-18, 2018-19, 2019-20, 2020-21, 2021-22, 2022-23. Clear? Let us see. Now this base year, assume in this base year, number of pens, okay, number of pens that were being produced here was suppose 10, and the price of one pen, was suppose 10 rupees per pen. Clear? Now let us see in this year. 2017-18, the quantity of pens that were being produced were suppose 15, and the prices of current year. This is the price of current year. That whatever the price of current year, let us see rupees 20. Let us see next year. Quantity of pens that were being produced was 15, but the prices of current year, it went bit higher. Somehow the inflation happened. Then the quantity of pens remains the same. Sorry, the quantity got changed. The quantity got changed. Then the quantity got changed, 25, and the price of current year, why I'm writing it's base year, prices of current year is 30. Then you know this was a COVID year. In a COVID year, the demand fell down. So let us see the quantity were produced that was same, but price, when the demand was less, the price will come down. Let us see, the price came down to be 10 rupees per pen. Again next year, quantity of pen is 25. Price of current year went down to 5 rupees per pen. Next year, quantity is 15 and the prices of current year will be, you can say, 10. So let us try to analyze. I might change the fact because the observations which I make, I want you to learn and write it. I think it's given in the book itself. Clear? The observations which I want to highlight. What is that? Let us see the nominal GDP and real GDP. I hope it is visible to you guys. Nominal GDP is prices, quantity into price of current year. So 15 into 20, 300. What about real GDP? Real GDP is quantity 15 into prices of some base year, that is 150. Clear? Next, again, nominal GDP here 15 into 30. How much? 450. But what about real GDP? 15 into 10, 150. Next, I'll tell you the observations, don't worry. Nominal GDP here, 25 into 30, 750. And what about real GDP here? What about real GDP? Real GDP will be coming out to be 250. Then here, nominal GDP is 250. Real GDP is again 250 here. Then here, nominal GDP come out to be 125. Real GDP come out to be 225 into price of base year, 250. Any doubt here? I think all observations we can come up from this itself. See, the first point which I want to highlight about nominal and real GDP. I told you nominal GDP is calculated with respect to the value being taken at the prices of current year. Now, how this current year prices are different from the base year prices, you might be seeing kuch to महंगाई बढ़ी होगी ना, that's why the current year prices would be different from the base year. But there might be a catch. Sir, why are you always thinking that the prices might have increased? Sir, the prices might have decreased also. Yes or no? Perfect. Prices might have decreased also. And in that case, that year we say the country witnessed deflation, not inflation, deflation. We'll talk about these concepts later in our inflation chapter. But now you see quantity and price. So you see nominal GDP can be greater than real GDP if the country witnessed inflation. Observation 1. If the country witnessed inflation means you can see the prices of current year higher than the prices of base year. That means the country has seen an increase in the price level, and that is what we call it as inflation. So whenever there is an inflation, you will find out if the quantity remain the same. Quantity is going to be the same. If the country is witnessing an inflation, you will find out nominal GDP to be greater than real GDP. Clear? Second, now what has happened in these two cases? Please try to tell me. I have put quantity constant, guys. Quantity have not changed. Now when quantity have not changed, but the prices have changed. Try to understand. Scenario 1, quantity have not changed, but the prices have changed. What is nominal GDP? Quantity into price of current year, that is 450. What about real GDP? Real GDP is going to be the same. So, sir, I can say this directly from this formula itself, from this understanding itself. Sir, real GDP will change only and only, real GDP will change only and only if there is a change in the quantity, because the prices of base year are constant. It is not variable. So when prices of base year are constant, it is not variable. So that means real GDP will change only and only if quantity got changed. Yes or no? I hope you are getting this. Real GDP will change only and only if quantity get changed. Now in this scenario, when the quantity has remained the same, you can observe real GDP has remained the same. Can you see that? Real GDP has remained the same. This is what the concept I was talking about. Clear? This is what I was talking about, that how the real GDP changes only with the change in output. This is second observation. Real GDP changes only with the change in output. But what about nominal GDP? Nominal GDP changes with the change in output, and nominal GDP changes with the change in the prices. Just look at this case number 1. In this case number 1, we have maintained this quantity constant, prices have changed. When the prices have changed, haven't we seen the change in the nominal GDP? Yes. At the same time, look at these two examples now. Prices are constant. So quantity have changed. When quantity have changed, will we see a change in the real GDP? Yes, you can see that. On the other hand, can we see a change in the nominal GDP? Yes, you can see that. So I am trying to convey this very important point to you. Nominal GDP changes with the change in the volume of production. You can call it as an output, or change in the prices. While real GDP changes with the change in output only. Now observation number 3. Now you see here, in this quantity has remained the same. Now when quantity has remained the same, real GDP is going to be the same. Yes. Now look at the nominal GDP. That means, sir, you are saying nominal GDP can also be equal to real GDP? Yes. Nominal GDP can also be equal to real GDP if the prices of current year are same as the prices of base year. Are you getting my point? If the prices of current year are same as the prices of base year. So in that case, nominal GDP can be equal to real GDP. So sir, I have understood nominal GDP can be greater than real GDP if the country witness inflation. So nominal GDP can be equal to real GDP if the prices of current year is same as the prices of base year. Sir, is there any possibility can the nominal GDP be lower than real GDP? Let me show you that. Now this year again you see the price have declined, When prices are declining, we call this phase as deflation phase. We call this phase as deflation phase. Now look at the nominal GDP. 25 into 5, 125. What about real GDP? Quantity is same. So real GDP will be changing? No. Now can you see nominal GDP be lesser than real GDP? Yes. Nominal GDP can be lower than real GDP if the country has witnessed deflation. Or in a simple terms, if the country has witnessed decline in the price levels. Clear? I hope you have understood this aspect. Clear? So all my observations are done. Now I just want to ask from you that after all this understanding of nominal and real GDP, what is your opinion? Which is a better measure which is a better measure of GDP, nominal or real? Real GDP. Why? Because real GDP changes only and only with the change in output. Clear? See, prices, nominal GDP might give an overestimated GDP, when I'm saying, because it might be higher because of inflation. But real GDP is about that strength. Real GDP is about that strength that is there in an economy. Real GDP tells about that whether the production has been increasing or not. Real GDP tells us, because if the production is increasing, try to understand, the production is increasing, this will lead to employment generation. When there will be employment generation, there will be reduction of poverty. Poverty reduction will happen, the standard of life will be improving. That can be seen through real GDP, not nominal GDP, guys. Nominal GDP can give you, I would say, overestimated, can give you an overhyped type of thing. Clear? This is what I'm trying to tell you. यही चीज ना मैं आपको देखो, आपको लगता होगा सर इतना क्यों बोलते हैं, but this is what I try to convey. आप जो YouTube पे इतने सारे जो देखते हो ना, छोटे छोटे स्निपेट, शॉर्ट्स, आपको बहुत अच्छा लगता होगा. But just think at once about the substance. How much is the actual substance in that YouTube video? और अगर इतना ही substance था उस बंदे ने अगर YouTube में, then why are they selling courses separately? Because they even know that those videos did not have that much substance and thereby will be giving them in a paid courses. So आप इतने जो hype बनाते हो, that is an hype that has been created, but the real thing is different. Nominal might be an overestimation, but the ultimate strength of an economy can be measured through real GDP. It's a true measure of GDP. Clear? But इसमें सर एक concept आपने बार-बार बोला, base year. I haven't given you any idea about the base year. So let me now talk about the base year first of all. See, we need 1 year to know the prices from which we can start. होता है ना benchmarking. Like if you run a race, you start from some benchmark line, yes or no? Start from that benchmark line. और अगर आप नहीं करोगे, try to understand, if there's no benchmark, someone is moving from ahead, someone is moving from behind, there will be a kind of haphazardness. You need 1 year that can tell you that, okay, this is the benchmark year for which you have to consider the prices. And this base year, guys, this base year have to undergo multiple, or you can say continuous revisions. Base year have to go continuous revisions. And even, let me tell you, it has been recommended by the National Statistical Commission. National Statistical Commission says that base year need to be revised in every 5 years. It needs to be revised in every 5 years. But the point is, why? We need to discuss this. Why is there a need for base year revision? Why? What will be happening? See, you are calculating real GDP. And I hope you understood that real GDP is a better measure of measuring the national income as compared to nominal. But real GDP takes into consideration, sir, the prices of constant here. Now, if I want to highlight that, okay, tell me how much is the national economy generated in our current time. Now, at this present of time, if you see, economy is producing new services which were not there in 2011-12. Our economy is producing those goods and services which were not there. Sir, example, you can see the Swiggy, Zomato and all those things. Food deliveries, that is a service that have been added. Then what about, sir, cryptocurrency exchange thing? Yes or no? So there have been this blockchain technology. There have been new goods about wearables. Wearables, what about that? Clear? ये VR, AR क्या पहले हुआ करता था? No, no. So what will happen? Basically, the country is in that phase, or an economy, if I talk about any economy, is in that phase which undergoes structural changes. And these structural changes are very, very fast in this fourth industrial revolution. Now, when these structural changes are happening, what you need? You need the base year to incorporate, to give the prices of these recent innovations. But if you take the base year so old, 2011-12, where these structural changes have not been incorporated, so from where you will come to know the prices of the current services being produced at that base year price? कहां से आएगा? आप बताओ ना, wearables का अभी का, you will get the current year prices of the wearables. You will get the services, the crypto services, or the Zomato delivery, all these food delivery services of current year. Will you get it at 2011 period? You don't have. Why? Because our base year is old. Our base year is old. So thereby it is said that base year needs to be revised to capture the structural changes that happen in an economy. To capture the structural changes happening or occurring in an economy. Capture the structural changes which is occurring in an economy. That is what about base year. Clear? So base year needs to be revised. There's no doubt about that. But sir, then how should we choose the base year? One thing you can clearly say is that base year has to be, so suppose if I'm talking about the conditions, what are the suitable conditions for choosing any year as a base year? First, it should be as close as possible. As close as possible. Because when it is as close as possible, what will happen? The recent services which are being produced, that will definitely be there in a year back, 2 year back, 3 year back, or 4 year back. Yes or no? So it should be as close as possible. But what happens, suppose if I am sitting in 2025 and we are like, ki chalo, let us revise this base year. We thought of base year, revision of base year in 2021-22. But we realize, oh, 2020-21, 21-22 is not a good year. It was a turbulent year. The prices were dropped mainly due to external COVID. So thereby, the second condition is, yes, the base year has to be as close as possible. But it cannot be a turbulent year where the prices might have dropped or declined due to some external factors. Clear? So thereby the second condition is it should be a normal year without any fluctuations, so that the prices represent the average trend that is there in a year without any fluctuations. And third, it should have an absolute, I would say, the most credible data set. Now what happened? Generally, okay, many of you say, sir, why not choose 2023-24? We cannot. The reason is because to get that data of all the goods and services take amount of something taken around of 2 to 3 years, the absolute credible data. So thereby you cannot put it as close like, okay, just previous year. You cannot do that. So the third condition also need to be there, that somehow a credible data set should be available. Comprehensive and credible data set should be available. Comprehensive and credible data set should be available. Clear? This is what about the base year. Why it needs to undergo revisions? To capture the structural changes. Clear? And then what are the conditions? Now, generally you will always find out whenever there is a forward shift of a base year. When I say forward shift of a base year, I mean it like whenever there is a forward shift of base year, like earlier the base year was 2004-05. This base year got changed to 2011-12. This is called forward shift. Let me tell you guys, whenever there is a forward shift of the base year, you are going to find a slight increase in the GDP value. A slight increase in the GDP value in the revised estimates. Why is it so? See, if one first reason is why you will find out an increase in the GDP values when there is a forward revision of base year. First point is you will be able to measure more comprehensively, more correctly the value of goods and service produced at this year prices. Yes or no? You will be able to measure more correctly and more comprehensively. Because earlier in 2004-05, you might not be able to calculate correctly the value of these goods and service would be. Clear? But 2011-12, don't you think it will bring the ambit more? I would say it will bring more the ambit, under its ambit, the various goods and services which were not being captured under 2004-05. So better comprehensiveness, yes or no? This is one major reason. Second, this I will not be talking right now. We'll be talking in inflation. Second, you can say the growth rate. Growth rate, you will also find it out to be increasing. And that is because of base effect. Base effect. This concept, remember that I'll be discussing this concept of base effect in the inflation chapter. You can even mention it here, base effect covered in inflation chapter, like that. Clear? Now, everything is done, but still I won't be able to tell, okay, what is the official GDP? If someone asks me, sir, how is the GDP calculated? You might say, sir, real GDP. Calculate the GDP by taking the price of the base year. But I would say it's an incorrect answer, partially correct answer. Because for GDP to be calculated, you do not need just only the prices of year, that is whether it be current or the base. You don't just need only the prices of a particular year. You also know the stage at which GDP should be calculated. What I mean with the stage is there is a supply. If you look at this, just try to understand. This is a factory which have procured raw materials. And in this factory, the factors of production, with the help of factors of production, the goods are being produced. The goods are produced. Clear? So here the goods are produced. Goods are produced. Clear? And once the goods are produced here, so why we are saying the factory? Because in a factory you will be organizing the various factors of production which can be used to produce these various goods. Once these goods go out in the market, there are various indirect taxes that is charged. Yes or no? Various indirect taxes. What are those? Again, we'll be covering in detail under the chapter taxation. But let me give you an idea about indirect taxes. Indirect taxes, I refer it here like for producing the goods, for undertaking manufacturing, this person might have to pay, the manufacturer have to pay excise duty. Then he's selling this good to a bigger distributor. He has to pay GST. Like that, there will be various indirect taxes that will be added before it is being sold in the market. Yes or no? Before it is being sold in the market. But certain goods, government provide subsidies also. That okay, fine, the goods have been produced at this rate, the indirect taxes have been added, but government provides some subsidies also. Clear? So now you see you are getting two prices. One price you are getting it at the factory stage. This is known as the price at the factory stage, factor cost. Clear? The price at the factor cost. Are you getting my point? The price at factor cost. This price at factor cost is the price being paid. Like this price at factor cost is the actual cost incurred to produce these goods and service. Actual cost incurred to produce the goods and service. But slowly, when it goes into the market, in this price, indirect tax will be added and subsidies will be removed. So the price at the market, that means at the price at which it will be sold to the consumer, sold to us, that price we can take it as price at market M. Clear? Now, if I tell you price at market, don't you think so? Price at factor cost plus indirect tax minus subsidies. Can I not say this? Yes or no? This is, we calculate two prices at different stages of production chain. Goods move from the factory stage to the consumer. This whole chain is called supply chain. Will be covered in the mains lectures, definitely. But in brief, you should know supply chain refers to the chain from the factory stage, from the factor gate stage to the goods produced at the goods at the market, at which price it will be sold to the consumer. I hope you understood this. Now, don't you think there are two parameters now? Please do not get confused. Just try to get a sense of it. One, we need to know the price of which year we are going to take. Price of this current year or the price of some base year. Clear? The second thing we are trying to see that at which stage we should take the prices, whether we should calculate the price at factor stage or we should calculate the price at the market stage. If we have to calculate the price at the factor stage, so whatever the price at the factor stage, whatever the cost has been incurred, and that cost we can take with respect to constant year prices. That cost which is being incurred to produce this goods and service, we can take that cost from where? From the base year prices. So now you see two parameters are coming up. One, the stage, and second, whatever stage you see, the price you will be choosing at this year prices or some base year prices. Clear? This is known as market price and factor cost. So this, if prices is here, can you not write like this? So GDP at market price can be written as GDP at factor cost plus indirect tax minus subsidies. Can I not write like this? Definitely. Clear? Because prices we know, so can't we write like this? GDP at market price will be GDP at factor cost. Whatever you calculate the GDP at factor cost plus indirect tax minus subsidies. Clear? This is whole about the GDP. This is whole about the GDP. Please see to this. I am pretty sure you must have understood very nicely about the concept of value we have discussed. The final we have already discussed in our earlier lecture. Marketable discussed goods, services, domestic territory and in a specified period. Clear? We have discussed in detail about nominal and real GDP, made some observations also. We looked into the concept of base year. We looked into the market price and factor cost. Yes or no? Clear? So what I want you again is here to pause the video. First of all, you try to summarize it by yourself. Because once you are able to summarize it by yourself, then I am going to summarize this GDP and tell you some more new things here. Clear? Tell you some more new things. But still, I want you to pause the video for just 2-3 minutes to process and to get a feel of the GDP. Please do that. So guys, if I summarize now the concept of GDP, what we have discussed, Let me put it in this way, that what is included under the GDP and what is not included. What's not included under the GDP. This type of questions can be asked, so you should be knowing this. What is included in the GDP? We have discussed this idea that GDP only captures final goods. Clear? And these final goods, let me tell you guys, it can be consumer or capital goods. It can be consumer or capital goods. Many of you might think that, sir, capital goods are not final goods. Let me tell you, it is wrong concept. Capital goods are final goods. Yes, these are those final goods that aid in the production of goods and service. Just tell me, guys, whether this board, just look at this digital board. Am I transforming this digital board and selling to you the digital board? No. I am using this capital, using this physical capital to aid in the production of this class. So many of you might generally think that, sir, capital goods are not final goods. That is wrong. That's why I'm especially writing here that what is included? Final goods. And in the final goods, both consumer or capital goods. And what is not included here? Intermediate goods. We have seen that intermediate goods are they are not included. Reason discussed already. Clear? Second aspect, if I talk about, GDP only captures marketable activities. Marketable, that means in short, it only captures economic activities. Clear? What is not included? Non-marketable, non-economic activities such as barter system transactions. Clear? Such as barter system transaction or charitable activities. In short, what is not included? Non-economic activities. Then there is one more non-economic activity which is not included, such as household activities by self. Household activities by self, it is not included. Yes or no? But on the other hand, if for the household activity you have employed a helper, the wages given to the helper, for household activities, that will be included because that wages is being given. That's an economic activity here. Then fourth, see, generally what happened, you might have created a home like this. Suppose this building has been created. Now once this building has been created, definitely it will be included in the calculation of GDP. But now the owner of this building sells it to another buyer. Tell me, in the next year, the gains which have been made, suppose this building has been made worth rupees 1 crore. Clear? Now this have been sold to another buyer, another owner, another individual in 2 CR. How much is the gain? 1 CR. Will that be included in the calculation of GDP? No. So basically, this gains from the resale of the house is not included. Why? Guys, just remember the basic concept of GDP. GDP is the value of goods and service being produced in an economy. Now you see, when we are selling this home to another person, what is the new value being created? Nothing. So why will you include that extra gain, that capital gain? You won't be including that capital gain in the calculation of GDP. Clear? So then the next question, sir, but there must be some new service being added. Yes. What is that service added in the selling and buying of houses? Brokerage. That is a new service, and that is why it is added. This brokerage service, is being added? Brokerage services, because that is the new value that is being added in an economy. Clear? Not the gains. Do remember that. Then the black money is not included. Obviously, you can know why. Clear? But then there are the goods which are produced for self-consumption. Goods produced for self-consumption. That is included. Okay. Sometimes you might get confused that, sir, these goods which are produced for self-consumption, sir, will it not be included? Arey, why not? The whole basic concept is the value of goods and service being produced, whether it be for self-consumption, whether it be for exports, whether it be for selling it to the other party, doesn't matter. Production has to take place within the domestic territory. That's it. Clear? And what is not included? Black money. What is not included? Black money. Clear? Next. Now, one more thing, it is very important that transfer payments are not included. Transfer payments, such as scholarships, pensions, like that. These things are not included. Scholarships or pensions. These transfer payments are not included. Now, what do you mean by transfer payments? Transfer payments, guys, they are one-way payments. One-way payments given by the government, or one-way payments, you can say, one-way payments given for which no economic activity is expected in return. Again, I'm telling you, transfer payments are those payments for which no economic activity is expected in return, such as scholarship, pensions. Clear? अब आप बोलोगे, सर अगर आप पेंशन दोगे, सर उनकी wages, they will have more money in their account. Sir, that will be used for the consumption purposes, which will directly lead to the GDP. Yes, impact would be there. But as I say that, okay, 2,500 rupees being given to the women account, will that be added directly in the calculation of GDP? No. No. Will it impact on the GDP growth rate? Yes. That we will see it later. But will it be directly included? No. Because the money which is given, the one-way payment which is given for that economic activity is not expected in return. Clear? That is transfer payment. Now, many of you take a myth that, sir, subsidies. Sir, subsidies, are they transfer payments? Let me tell you guys, subsidies are not transfer payments, and thereby they are included in the calculation of GDP. Now, my point is, sir, why subsidies are not transfer payments? See, subsidies are given by the government to encourage the production or consumption of any activity. To encourage the production or consumption. So, subsidies as such per se doesn't come under the transfer payment. And that is why if they don't come under the transfer payments, they will be included in the calculation of GDP. Lastly, what is not included in the calculation of GDP? That is externalities. Now, what I mean with the externalities, guys? Externalities, simply, I'm trying to tell you, externality refers to the unintended consequences in the production of goods or services. Simple. Unintended consequences in the production of goods and services. So, sir, this unintended consequences in the production of goods and services, sir, it can be positive or negative? Yes. Sir, it can be positive or negative? Yes or no? So, there can be positive externalities. That means in the production of any good and service, it is going to create a positive impact on the society. They have positive consequences on the society. For example, public transportation. Don't you think public transportation has positive consequence? Yes. Reducing traffic congestion, reducing pollution, all that aspect. Renewable energy. Renewable energy, you are being produced. You are producing renewable energy, but what is the unintended consequence? Unintended consequence is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, thereby less global warming, less impact on climate change, and so many other effects. So promotion of renewable energy, when your renewable energy is being produced, it has the positive externalities. Clear? What about these roads, that big infrastructure, that expressway being built? Yes. Street lighting. You see, street lighting is being produced. Clear? That service is provided for once. But then what happened? What is the positive impact it has created? Safety of women. Not just only safety for women, safety of overall individuals there. Yes or no? So this is what the positive externalities. But then there can be negative externalities also, like coal power plant. If I talk about coal power plant, see, you are using coal for producing electricity. You are including electricity in the calculation of GDP? Yes. You are including electricity in the calculation of GDP. But what about the unintended consequence that is being released? The harmful greenhouse gases. Are you including that in the calculation of GDP? No. Clear? What about this economic growth? See, there have been economic growth due to overuse of resources, overuse of like cutting of forest, environmental degradation, soil depletion. आप soil को इतना ज़्यादा consume कर रहे हो that soil has been degraded, forest damage, mineral depletion, energy depletion, overall environmental degradation is there as a consequence of faster and faster economic growth. But are you accounting that negative externality in the calculation of GDP? No. No. Because if you would have been accounting that environmental degradation, your GDP might have been lower. Might have been lower. So that is why a new concept emerged known as green GDP. Green GDP. And what is this green GDP? Green GDP is the GDP which is adjusted for environmental degradation. Green GDP is the GDP adjusted for environmental degradation. Any doubt? Clear? So green GDP is the GDP adjusted for environmental degradation.